is identifying protesters outside embassies and consulates, matching their profiles with electronic databases, and then abducting their brothers, sisters, parents, and other relatives in Pakistan, and then forcing the US citizens and the residents into silence.
Former Prime Minister Imran Khan remains in prolonged solitary confinement in violation of international law. His wife, Bushra Bibi, is subjected to the same treatment.
I faced assassination attempts in Pakistan in a helicopter when I was accompanying former Prime Minister Imran Khan on a humanitarian trip to Dera Ismail Khan.
These actions set a dangerous precedent for foreign interference on American soil.
But after 2023, what we have seen under the leadership of Asim Munir, Pakistan has adopted a very calculated and very refined strategy of TNR.
Immediately after the report, Pakistan Army, along with other law enforcement agencies, raided my house, my family house in Islamabad, in which my mother, my sister, and two brothers were living, and they kidnapped my two brothers.
I believe this case is politically motivated and designed to silence critics and isolate dissidents, including United States citizens living in the United States.
The current regime of Field Marshal Asim Munir is the most ruthless, callous, and repressive. Independent journalists and critics have been killed, arrested, tortured, and harassed.
Pakistan's most recent general elections were not fair, nor were they transparent, and yet the White House has chosen to cozy up to Pakistan's dictator-in-chief Asim Munir.
The time is right for sanctions. We do not need Pakistan for any grand strategic game. I'm not talking for broad sanctions. I'm talking for very specific sanctions on individuals in uniform, in the intelligence, and also collaborating civilians.
These restrictions on freedom of expression are all the more concerning amid a concerted and sustained attack on the independence of the judiciary, the right to free trial, and rule of law in Pakistan.
Honorable members of the United States Senate, my name is Dr. Shahbaz Gill. I'm a Pakistani citizen and a lawful US resident, a former professor of leadership and management at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and a former spokesperson and chief of staff to Pakistan's former Prime Minister, Mr. Imran Ahmad Khan Niazi. I appear before you as a direct victim and eyewitness of state repression carried out by Pakistan's military establishment in August 2022. After a televised interview in which I stated that all state officials must obey Pakistan's constitution and refuse unlawful orders, I was abducted, tortured, and charged with sedition by Pakistani intelligence agencies. That same program featured the prominent journalist Arshad Sharif. On the day I was abducted, he fled Pakistan. He was later assassinated in Kenya. His mother formally petitioned Pakistan's Supreme Court, naming former Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa, former ISI Chief Nadeem Anjum, and other senior military officials as responsible. I was subsequently booked in dozens of fabricated cases, placed on Pakistan's no-fly list, and silenced through fear. I was only able to leave Pakistan in April 2023 through an order of the Lahore High Court's larger bench. After arriving in the United States, I continued peaceful political advocacy through political journalism, social media, and public rallies. In retaliation, in June 2024, my brother was abducted and kept in illegal detention for months by military intelligence to force my silence. Family members and associates faced bank account freezes, phone disconnections, and travel bans, a clear pattern of transnational repression. Several prominent Pakistani journalists have suffered similar persecution. Many now live in exile abroad and continue to be harassed and chased by the Pakistani regime. Former Prime Minister Imran Khan remains in prolonged solitary confinement in violation of international law. His wife, Bushra Bibi, is subjected to the same treatment. Senior political leaders, including Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Dr. Yasmin Rashid, an elderly cancer survivor, Mia Mahmood Rashid, Omar Chima, and Senator Ijaz Chaudhry, have been convicted in fabricated May 9 cases through deeply politicized and militarized proceedings. At the same time, Mr. Hassan Niazi and hundreds of other innocent Pakistani citizens have been sentenced in military courts under the same false pretext. A disabled party worker, Mr. Zille Shah, was tortured and killed by Lahore police. Under Army Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir, Pakistani women have faced unprecedented brutality. Among them is Khatija Shah, a renowned fashion designer and US citizen, along with many other women who were imprisoned, abused, and later sentenced to 6 to 10 years through kangaroo courts in these fabricated cases. Despite this repression, the Pakistani people delivered a two-third majority to Imran Khan's party. The election results were manipulated, the public mandate was stolen, and when citizens peacefully demanded their mandate on November 26, 2024, security forces shot protesters directly in the heads killing them. Pakistan today is under de facto martial law of Field Marshal Asim Munir. I urge the United States Senate to stand with the Pakistani people for democracy, rule of law, and fundamental human rights. Silence enables repression. Accountability can prevent further bloodshed.
Good evening, Chair and distinguished senators. My name is Ahmed Noorani and I'm a Pakistani journalist. I am part of Pakistani American community and living in state of Virginia in DMV area. While in Pakistan, I reported about bad governance, corruption and human rights violations, and I was based in Pakistan's capital Islamabad. During my career, I reported about the human rights abuses by Pakistan's powerful military and its elite intelligence agency, Inter-Services Intelligence ISI. Because of my work, I was repeatedly attacked by the ISI and its religious fanatic groups, and my family was made target at multiple times. In an October 2017 attack, I was almost killed, an incident that was reported by New York Times and Washington Post back then. After coming in United States in 2020, I started my own digital media platform with the name Fact Focus. Fact Focus has extensively reported about the corruption of the military journals, politicians, and also reported about the misuse of blasphemy laws in Pakistan, because of which around 800 youngsters are in jails. On March 17, 2025, almost 1 year back, I reported about corruption and wrongdoings of General Asim Munir, the Chief of Army Staff of Pakistani military, currently called Field Marshal Asim Munir by President Trump. The report was based on official data and was reporting how his close relatives are running the show. Immediately after the report, Pakistan Army, along with other law enforcement agencies, raided my house, my family house in Islamabad, in which my mother, my sister, and two brothers were living, and they kidnapped my two brothers. After kidnapping of my brothers, my mother moved Islamabad High Court. After 33 days, my brothers were returned to my mother and my sister in a miserable condition. My brothers were kept in a cage-like cell and they were tortured ruthlessly. My brothers lost their jobs, their bank accounts were blocked. My mother, who is 66 years old, her pension account was blocked. But when my brothers were released, the government forced the media to release the news that basically my brothers were kidnapped by Decades. Interestingly, the bank accounts were blocked and my mother's bank account was blocked when my brothers were in custody of these so-called Decades. My brothers lost everything. My younger brother was doing an online business which was very profitable for him, but he was blacklisted because of disappearing without any intimation. My younger brother started applying for jobs outside Pakistan and ultimately got a job in Saudi Arabia and also get a visa, but when he wanted to travel, he was stopped and was informed that he was put on exit control list on April 7, 2025. This was the date when he was in custody. My other brother went for some passport thing, and the passport and immigration office told him that his passport has been cancelled by the government of Pakistan without assigning any reason. He was provided with a document which shows that his passport was cancelled on April 7, 2025. Again, this was the date when he was in custody. And according to the official narrative of the government of Pakistan, my brothers were kept by some dacoits. Right now, my family is living in a miserable situation in Pakistan. They are like in prison. The pension account, the only account in which some flow of money takes place, is my mother's pension account, which is blocked since April 2025. Nobody is ready to listen. There are different petitions filed by my family in Islamabad High Court, but Islamabad High Court is not listening. When my brother was stopped, he also moved the Islamabad High Court. Initially, court was not hearing the petition, but later, because of the lawyers' organizations' insistence, the petition was heard and his name was removed from ECL. He tried to leave the country first in September and then in November, but both the times he was stopped. Second time in November 2025, he was told that his name was removed from ECL after the court orders, but it was included once again. Apparently, Pakistan Army wants my family to die of hunger. They are not allowing them to do anything inside Pakistan just because of my report, which is still there, and I stand by each and every word reported because each and every word is based on the official documents. Not a single fact in my story about the corruption and wrongdoings of General Asim Munir, the Army Chief of Pakistan, and his family members is denied so far. Only thing happened is a consistent action against my family. I'm living in America and my family in Pakistan has nothing to do with my work. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mehlaka Samdani. I am with the Community Alliance for Peace and Justice, an advocacy group based in Massachusetts that seeks to improve U.S. policy towards Pakistan and Palestine. I am deeply grateful to First Pakistan Global for organizing this briefing today and inviting me to share my experience with transnational repression, which, according to Freedom House, is when foreign governments reach across national borders to target exile communities and their diaspora communities to silence dissent and criticism. So approximately 4 months ago, I received a legal notice from Pakistan's National Cybercrimes Investigations Agency. This letter was sent to my ancestral home in Pakistan, and it demanded that I appear in person in front of the investigators of the agency. And if I did not comply, it would result in a seizure of tangible and intangible property, identity, and accounts. As a result of this notice, I have been advised by my legal counsel and law enforcement agencies to not travel to Pakistan for the foreseeable future. As a U.S. citizen exercising my First Amendment rights, this was a chilling reminder of how far the Pakistani regime is willing to go to silence dissent and criticism. My experience is far from isolated, and it's certainly not as harrowing as what other people have endured. Today, you will hear from other journalists and activists who've spoken out against the regime's human rights violations, and as a result, their family members back home in Pakistan have been threatened and abducted. Some have had multiple life sentences against them, and others have had their property seized. These actions set a dangerous precedent for foreign interference on American soil. Both Freedom House and the U.S. State Department's human rights reports have identified Pakistan as one of 26 governments that have engaged in transnational repression. It is very important to note that this action of or practice of targeting activists abroad or the diaspora reflect a broader pattern of military authoritarianism and systemic human rights violations in Pakistan. Many international watchdogs and media outlets have meticulously documented how Pakistan's military and intelligence agencies manipulate elections, censor the media, use lethal force against unarmed protesters, abduct and disappear Baloch and Pashtun nationalists. And those human rights defenders and lawyers who dare to speak out against these violations of human rights themselves become targets. For instance, just last week, a very prominent and very courageous human rights lawyer, Iman Hazir Mazari, and her husband were sentenced to 10 years each in prison for daring to tweet against the military and intelligence agencies' human rights violations. Such is the level of repression that Pakistani activists are currently enduring. The regime also continues to detain hundreds of political prisoners, including the former Prime Minister Imran Khan, whose ongoing incarceration has been deemed unlawful by the UN working groups on arbitrary detentions. With the recent passage of the 27th Amendment, which grants lifetime immunity to Field Marshal Asim Munir and effectively ends judicial independence, the military leadership has cemented its iron grip over Pakistan and its institutions. In response, the Pakistani diaspora has become very active and has mobilized and has worked tirelessly to engage with Congress and raise awareness about Pakistan's human rights crisis. On December 3rd last year, 44 congressional Democrats led by Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal and Congressman Greg Khazar signed a letter to Secretary of State Rubio and calling on him to hold the Pakistani military and civilian leadership accountable for its role in targeting Pakistani Americans. The letter also called for the imposition of Magnitsky-style sanctions such as visa bans and asset freezing against those who are credibly accused of human rights violations. While this congressional letter sends a very strong message to the Pakistani government, more work is needed because Congress has yet to pass legislation on transnational repression. At this time, there are two bills that are very promising. The first was introduced by Senators Merkley and Dan Sullivan, and this was introduced last year in July. It's called the Transnational Repression Policy Act. And the second one is HR 2158 that was introduced by Congressman Pfluger. And this would establish a dedicated working group within DHS to monitor and counter these threats. So it is very critical at this time for lawmakers to advance both pieces of legislation. The U.S. holds significant leverage over Pakistan through programs like the International Military Education and Training, maintenance support for its F-16's fleet, and influence over IMF and other financial institutions. And it must use that leverage to ensure that and push back against Pakistan's democratic collapse and escalating campaign of transnational repression. Finally, I would like to end with this. Foreign authoritarianism on American soil is not a distant issue. It is not a diaspora problem. It is a direct assault on American citizens and residents and undermines democratic norms, both that protect everyone. Then the U.S. must act decisively to end both. Thank you very much.
Good morning, senators and all others. My name is Shaheen Sabai, and I'm a U.S. citizen living in the U.S. for 31 years. I'm a veteran journalist from Pakistan where I held top positions as group editor of the largest newspaper chain and head of the largest TV channel. I resigned in 2016 and returned to the U.S. Currently, I'm active on the social media as an analyst and commentator with 1.8 million followers on Twitter and thousands on the Facebook. I have always fought for democracy and human rights in my 55 years career, and I've faced and fought many military regimes. I survived all of them, sometimes by resigning my job and at others when the regime fell. My resignation in 2003 became so high profile, the CNN International did a full 30-minute show to highlight it. But the current regime of Field Marshal Asim Munir is the most ruthless, callous, and repressive. Independent journalists and critics have been killed, arrested, tortured, and harassed regularly without impunity. With impunity, I think. Since I am a vocal critic, I have been implicated in numerous false cases, declared as an absconder, and fugitive by subservient Pakistani courts, and last month, me and 5 other dissidents were sentenced to 2 life terms in prison in absentia because someone heard us on YouTube and attacked our military installations. We were not given a chance or a notice to defend ourselves. And a lawyer was asked to defend us. We don't know who he was, without any information or notice. It was a sheer bogus kangaroo court trial. The court sentenced us to 2 life imprisonments. All this falls in the broad category of transnational repression, and while I or any of my family members cannot travel to Pakistan fearing the state repression, I am not feeling safe in the US as well. Why I say so is that 3 colleagues have been attacked recently, 2 in the UK and 1 in Washington, D.C. 9 persons, all hired guns, were arrested in UK and in DC investigations. In DC, investigations must be going on when a house of our colleague was put on fire. I urge the Senate to make stringent laws to stop this growing threat to US citizens and fighters for freedoms and human rights. I have submitted a detailed written testimony as well.
Members of the Senate, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Syed Akbar Hussain. I'm a United States citizen based in Ashburn, Virginia. I'm also a social media commentator, and I previously served as a lieutenant colonel in the Pakistan Army. For years, I have spoken publicly about human rights abuses, corruption, and the suppression of dissent in Pakistan. I'm here today because in response to that speech, I've been targeted and harassed here in the United States and virtually from abroad by individuals I believe are linked to the Pakistan's military-backed authorities. Let me be clear. This is not simply online criticism or political disagreement. In my experience, it reflects transnational repression, a pattern of intimidation meant to silence, deter, and isolate critics, even when they are United States citizens living on the American soil. The targeting against me has included threats and harassment, but it has also involved the use of legal and quasi-legal processes inside Pakistan, weaponized in a way that reaches across borders. Around March 10th, 2024, I received a threatening letter from a foreign embassy, of course, Pakistan Embassy in Washington, D.C. That letter referenced a first information report number 3054/23 of August 15th, 2023 from Police Station South Cantonment, Lahore. It stated that a military court was using a civilian FIR to summon me in Chunia Cantonment on March 23rd, 2024, which is supposed to be a public holiday. It did not provide any meaningful detail about the court, the procedure, or how I could defend myself while being a US citizen living in the United States. Then in July of 2024, Pakistan's military spokesperson, the DGI SPR, publicly stated that I had been sentenced to a 14 years imprisonment by a closed-door military court, along with additional penalties. I dispute the legitimacy and the due process of these actions, and I believe they were intended to intimidate me and deter my speech. Separately, in 2022, another criminal case was fabricated and registered against me in Islamabad. Based on documents reported in the media, trial court convicted me and 6 other reputable international journalists of Pakistani origin, Mr. Shaheen Sebai, Adil Raja, Dr. Moeed Pirzada, Mr. Haider Mehdi, Sabir Shakir, and Wajahat Saeed Khan, to name them, with sentences described as totaling up to 99 years per person. I believe this case is politically motivated and designed to silence critics and isolate dissidents, including United States citizens living in the United States. The impact is real, and it is ongoing. It affects my personal security, my work, and my ability to participate freely in public life as an American. No US citizen should face intimidation for exercising protected speech. And no foreign-linked network should be able to conduct harassment campaigns on US soils against US citizens. I've reported these incidents to FBI and local law enforcement. They've responded professionally and they have provided support. But my case is not only about me. It is about a method, one that blends online harassment with coercion and then tries to dress intimidation up as law. That is why transnational repression is so difficult for victims to navigate and so important for the governments to confront. Today, I respectfully ask the Senate and the US government to do 4 things. First, strengthen identification and investigation of transnational repression. Second, hold perpetrators accountable where the evidence supports it, including visa restrictions and targeted sanctions against individuals involved in intimidation, coercion, and the misuse of legal processes. Third, address the abuse of legal processes used to target dissidents. And fourth, support and protect victims, including journalists and activists. I am prepared to provide documentation, a timeline of incidents, and supporting materials for appropriate reviews. Senators, I thank you for your time and for defending a simple principle that free speech in the United States must be protected from foreign intimidation. I thank you again.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Salman Ahmed, Chair, Senators, distinguished guests, and fellow Americans. For most of my life, I've carried 2 passports and 1 conscience. That conscience has guided me as a physician, a musician, a former UN Goodwill Ambassador, to bridge cultures through art, dialogue, and hope. But I'm here today because those same bridges have been attacked by the very regime whose anthem I once sang on global stages. Transnational repression. When authoritarian states target citizens and critics abroad, it has become one of the most insidious threats to democracy in our time. It's no longer an overseas problem. It's happening right here in the United States. On December 3rd, 2025, close to 50 members of Congress sent a bipartisan letter to Secretary Marco Rubio, warning of a worsening campaign of transnational repression by Pakistan's military and intelligence services. That letter did something extraordinary. It named names, and those names included my own. It described how my brother-in-law, my sister, were abducted in Pakistan, held without charge, after I spoke here in America about human rights abuses under General Asim Munir. My family, they're all US citizens, including me, have been harassed, threatened, and had it not been for American law enforcement agencies, they would still be in incarceration, abducted somewhere in Pakistan. These acts are not random or isolated. They form part of a systematic effort by Pakistan's military and intelligence networks to intimidate, silence, and punish diaspora voices, especially those advocating for democracy and the release of imprisoned former Prime Minister Imran Khan. Since my first testimony last year, this repression has intensified. My social media accounts have been algorithmically throttled on the recommendation of foreign agents. Anonymous messages warn me to stop or suffer consequences. My relatives still live in daily fear. The goal is simple: censorship through terror. But this is not only about Pakistan. From Beijing to Tehran, Riyadh to New Delhi, authoritarian powers are testing whether American soil can remain a safe space for free thought. They are probing US weakness, exploiting legal gaps, and using disinformation, infiltration, and coercion to undermine our institutions. If America fails to respond decisively, authoritarian regimes everywhere will learn that our freedoms are negotiable. That is why I urge the Senate to draw a clear, unambiguous line. 1. Protect US citizens. The FBI and DOJ should pursue these cases with the same resolve used against foreign interference. 2. Sanction the perpetrators. Utilize Global Magnitsky and Democracy Act tools against Pakistani officials and intelligence operatives who direct or enable these campaigns. 3. Defend the digital commons. Tech companies must disclose and resist back-channel censorship requests from authoritarian states that threaten constitutionally protected speech in America. 4. Tie aid to reform. No U.S. assistance should enable a regime that jails opposition leaders, abducts families, or intimidates Americans abroad. The test of partnership must be the defense, not the destruction of democracy. Senators, when we speak of transnational repression, we are not only defending Pakistani Americans, we are defending the American promise that freedom of conscience, speech, and artistic expression do not end at a dictator's whim. As an artist, I believe truth carries its own music. It cannot be silenced forever. I stand before you not in fear, but in fidelity to that music, to America's ideals, and to every voice that refuses to bow before repression. Thank you.